Welcome to Finding Holiness, where we delve into timeless Torah wisdom, revealing the sacred in everyday moments. Join us on a journey to elevate your spirituality and discover holiness in every aspect of life. I'm your host, Rabbi David Kadosh, and together, let's embark on a path of spiritual exploration. I hope you enjoy this next episode. And we are live. All right, everybody. Erev Tov, welcome. Glad to have everyone back, munching down on some delicious food. Chazaku Baruch for coming here online, in person, coming online, listening to us. It's always an honor to give Torah classes on Thursday night on the Parashat Shavua. We want to thank our dear sponsors. Tonight's class, Mr. and Mrs. Maurice Buzaglo, who sponsored the shiur in memory of his mother, Esther Buzaglo Zchonai Bracha. The words of Torah we say this evening, Bilu Nishmatati Nafshat Tzerura Yitzror HaHayim. Parashat Tetzave. And as well, Shabbat Zachor this week. Parashat Tetzave is known for a few things. Obviously, the main subject matter is that of the clothing of the Kohen Gadol. That takes a large part of the parasha. The beginning of the parasha is the commandment of lighting the menorah with pure olive oil. That's what we're going to spend most of our time discussing today. But it's also known to be the only parasha since Moshe Rabbeinu's birth, not to mention Moshe's name. This is the parasha where we don't find Moshe's name, although that it is hinted in a few places. But Moshe's actual name of Moshe is not mentioned. There are different reasons brought down to why Parashat Tetzaveh. So, of course, the reason why Moshe's name is not mentioned in the parasha actually takes place in next week's parasha, Parashat Ki Tisa, after the story with the golden calf. Moshe Rabbeinu was pleading with Hashem to forgive Am Yisrael for their sin. And he said, I need you to forgive me. If not, you're not going to do so, erase me from your book. Erase me from your book. That's what he says. And so Rav Ovadia Yosef, Zecher Tzadik Bracha, famously writes in the Sefer, Misifrecha is Misefer Kaf. If you take Misifrecha and you divide it into two, it's Misefer Kaf, the 20th Sefer, the 20th volume. You look at the 20th parasha that we're in, is Parashat Tetzaveh. All right, and that's, therefore, I was already hinting, Misifrecha is Parashat Tetzaveh. I heard another answer that I want to share with you. Of course, Moshe Rabbeinu gave this on condition, but still HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, the words of the Tzaddik comes out, he's got to come through with it. But in Hashem's eyes, okay, let me see if I can delay it. So when it happened in Parashat Ki Tisa, he delayed it to the next week, Vayakel. And then after Vayakel, he delayed it to Pekudeh. He kept on delaying until he went all the way around the cycle. Okay, and the last opportunity he had to erase Moshe's name from the Sefer Torah is the parasha before Ki Tisa, which is Parashat Tetzaveh. And that's why this is the one of the reasons I saw why Moshe Rabbeinu name is omitted. But I want to focus today on the beginning of the parasha. Ve'ata tetzaveh et bnei Yisrael ve'ikhu elecha shemen zayizach. Hashem tells Moshe, now you command bnei Israel that they shall take for you pure pressed olive oil, katit lamaor, pressed for illumination, leha'alot ner tamid, to kindle the lamp continually. Ve'oel moed michutz laparochet, in the tent of the meeting outside of the partition, asher ala edut, that is near the tablets of testimony. Yaroch oto Aaron ubanav me'erev haboker livnei Hashem. Aaron and his son shall arrange the candles from evening until morning before Hashem. Today's ideas are found from a sefer called the Magidim of the Yesteryear, which has some beautiful insights that I want to share with you. What does this mean, katit lamaor? That these olives, this shemen zayid, needs to be pressed for illumination. So he says, the Gemara actually says, Masechet Megillah, Daf Tet Zayin Amud Bet. What does it mean, press for illumination? To crush yourself. Every person has to crush themselves over Divrei Torah. That if you want to bask in the light of Torah, as in La Yehudim Hayta Ora V'Simcha V'Sason Bikar, as we're going to read very shortly in Megillat Esther, and we know that the Gemara tells us Ora Zu Torah. The word Ora in that pasuk of light is in reference to the Torah. Then you have to become crushed. You have to invest all of your time. You have to invest all of your effort over the words of the Torah. There was once a Jew who went up to the Tetzave Rebbe, and he says, Kvod Harav, I notice that you remain a lot in the Bet HaMidrash, in your own little corner. Why don't you go outside, go to the world, and go rescue these lost souls, people that are suffering? There's so much to be done. Why do you remain secluded? So he explained with a parable. He says, there were once 3 wealthy individuals that were arrested and thrown into a very dark, cramped prison. And it was actually nothing more than a pit. It was a hole in the ground. And you can imagine the torturous time that they went through. And, being a government prisoner in those days was very difficult. 2 of the men were very clever, but one man was a fool. And the guards used to pass some food into a hole in which the men, they languished. The foolish guy, unfortunately, because he was a fool, it was so dark, he couldn't find his way to eat the food. He was a fool. He just didn't know how to eat, couldn't see anything. And, every time he would take, the food would fall, couldn't even put it in his own mouth. So one of the guys who was wise, every day would help him find the food, feed him, just so that he can survive. All day long, he helped his inept cellmate, guiding him. And the third guy just kind of stood there on his own. Yeah, thanks. The third guy just kind of stood there on the side, paid no attention. Until one day, the second guy, one of the wise guys tells the other wise guy, he goes, listen, we're here suffering together. We're in this, the hole. You must have noticed that I'm helping the guy putting food in his mouth, and you're just saying on the side, why have you helped me? Why are you not help me bring the food to help this guy? So the guy says, let me tell you why. I'm just sitting over here. We're in the dark. This hole is total darkness. And when darkness is in control, we can't see a thing. And what you're actually doing is you're toiling and you're working for no purpose. You are investing hours and hours and hours trying to teach him how to eat and how to move. And it looks like nothing's ever going to work because the guy's a fool. He's already been here several weeks. He still doesn't know how to eat. But me, on the other hand, while you're doing this, I'm slowly digging a hole in the wall with my fingers. Because as I get closer and closer, I know I'm going to reach a point where I'm going to reach outside. And a little light is going to penetrate through that little hole in the wall. And a little bit of light dispels a great amount of darkness. And then we're going to be able to see what we need to see. In other words, the Tetzave Rebbe was saying, says, you guys do what you need to do. Let me do what I need to do to bring Torah down into this world. What was the first thing? Orah, the light of the Torah. We have to dig to get the light. We have to dig. We have to press ourselves. We have to crush ourselves. Because if there's light, if there's orah, then you have simcha and sason vikar. Then you have gladness. Then you have joy. Then you have honor. All because the light was able to penetrate. How do we illuminate ourselves with that light? Simple. We crush ourselves over divrei Torah. We toil over the words of Torah. And we engage in them very strongly. Another interpretation of this idea of crushing yourselves over divrei Torah is to literally crush yourselves. Well, not literally, we don't want to crush ourselves, but we crush our ego. We crush the I of ourselves. We subdue our arrogance. The Chachamim tell us that when a person is all about the I, then the Torah doesn't find a way to penetrate through him. Throw away your I, and when you learn Torah, that's what you have to learn. Find a way to nullify your arrogance and your ego. Once there was a test that was made. A certain Torah scholar that he said that he devised a little test. How many times a person would say the word "I" throughout the day? Okay, and he said the least of all the people he did the study on, the least was 30. And on average was 200 times a day a person uses the word I. That's how much we're thinking about ourselves. That's how much we care about ourselves. So of course, the full day, I told you, I ate this is what I think. It's all about me, 200 times a day. And what are we left with our I after 120 years? In the end, all of our eyes end up in the ground, in the place of maggots, in the place of worms, and a place of dust. There was once a guy who went up to his Rebbe, and he said, 5 years ago I was born. Now, he didn't actually mean he was only 5 years old. He meant that it was like the birth of his new self. He became a Baal Teshuvah. So he considered that 5 years ago he was born. But then he started complaining. So, Rabbi, in the first 2 years, I had an amazing amount of siyata dishmaya. God was helping me everywhere. Everywhere I looked, I saw God. In my job, my business, my family. I just felt like He was just guiding me. It was so amazing. The most awesome ways. Everywhere I turned, I had help from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And then later, I just felt like I started to lose that siyata dishmaya, that heavenly assistance. And I don't know what exactly went wrong. Well, what happened? Why did this happen to me? So the rabbi quoted to him a pasuk in Kohelet. The pasuk says, "Lo lachachamim lechem, lo lanevonim osher, v'gam lo layod'im chen." Nor does bread come to the wise, nor does riches come to the intelligent, nor does favor come to the learned. The simple meaning of this pasuk is that the wise man doesn't acquire parnasa, it doesn't acquire bread more than the foolish one does, and that many rich men are not very intelligent. So it's not the wisdom that brings a person bread. There's a lot of fools that made a lot of money. There's a lot of wise people that don't have money and that are starving. So he says the bread is not acquired through wisdom. So why does the text only mention the rich men? Why does the pasuk says lo lachachamim lechem lo nevonim osher? Why does the pasuk only mention the wise men? Sorry, are they the only ones that don't have bread? A lot of people that don't have bread, and he says they're the specific ones that lose out because when a person is wise, we automatically tend to think that guy is able to go out and get money. He's wise. Yeah, go. You're smart. You're a business guy, right? You did well. You're a master's in business. So go out and make money. Why aren't you making money? Why don't you find bread for yourself? You seem to know how to manage on your own. Go ahead. He goes, the same thing applies to you. He goes, the same thing applies to you in your ruchniyut and your spiritual side of looking things. At the start of your rise to spirituality, when you first became Baal Teshuvah, you thought you didn't arrive yet. You were still on your journey upwards. What's there to explore? You still felt lacking. You still felt the need to connect to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And as long as you thought that way, God was there to help you. But slowly, as time went on, you began to think that you were already a tzaddik. Right? That's what happens. Now that I'm a Baal Teshuvah for 3-4 years, or now that guys who grew up in a religious household all his life, I'm a tzaddik. I perform the mitzvot. I don't need to improve anymore. The moment you start thinking like that, you start thinking about yourself. I, 200 times a day. I'm fine. I'm good. Right? If I need someone, then it's not about me. It's about the other person. But you're now developing the mindset that you don't need Kadosh Baruch Hu anymore. So Hashem says, listen, you're a tzaddik? All right, good. Enjoy. Have a good life. You don't need any more help? You've arrived? Good for you. And then the siyata dishmaya dries up. That's the problem when a person starts thinking about his arrogance and his ego of I. So the Gemara tells us in Masechet Erechim that at the end of this week's parasha, there is the discussion of the korbanot, which follow the discussion of the clothes of the kohanim. And why is that? Why do we have the clothes of the kohanim followed by the korbanot? And the Gemara tells us because just like the korbanot are mechaper, atone, so too the clothes of the kohanim actually atone also. Something that we talk about in the avodah, the Yom Kippur, when we say the avodah, right? We talk about all the clothes of the kohanim and what sins they atone for. So the mitznefet was the hat of the kohen. It was the hat that the kohanim wore, not the kohen gadol, the kohanim. And what we say on Yom Kippur, or brought down in the Mefarshim, that the mitznefet atones for arrogance. It atones for gova lev, which is having an ego. So Rabbi Chanina and Gemara says, let something that is high, the hat is something that is high, let something high atone for the feeling of height, which is arrogance. The person is haughty, he feels like he's at the top of the world. So now, this is a little bit surprising, says Rabbi Elimelech Bitterman. He says, you would think the opposite. You would think that the atonement quality for arrogance would be the opposite effect. Bring something low. I don't know, the shoes, right? Oh, you're arrogant? Yeah, think of the shoes. Now you're really nobody. Why are we doing something high? If we're discussing the problem of ga'ava, of arrogance, and that the people of the Jewish nation felt proud and haughty. How does the mitznefet, which is worn proudly by the Kohen, bring atonement for the arrogance? So the Maharsha gives an answer to this in a Gemara in Masechet Zvachim, where it talks about that there's a segula, that if a person wears a head covering, such as a kippah, one of the reasons why we wear kippah and hats, is it brings humility to a person. So segula for humility. The Gemara Masechet Shabbat, Daf Kuf Nun Vav, says that the astrologers said to the mother of Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak, listen, we see in the stars that your son, he's going to be a ganav, he's going to be a thief. We see this in the stars, it's going to happen. So what did she do? She wanted to protect her son. She didn't want her son growing up to be a thief. So she had her son wear a head covering. And that, she would tell him, you cover your head, and you're going to have fear of Hashem, you're going to have Yirat Hashem, Yirat Elokim, and pray that the Yetzer Hara shouldn't rule over you. Now, he didn't really know why she was so worried about this. He was a good kid. But this is what the mom kept on telling him, make sure you wear your head covering. One day, Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak was sitting under a tree, and he was studying Torah. And a wind came and blew off his cloak that covered his head. He blew off his, back then it wasn't kippot like this, it was like a scarf. Right? It blew it off his head. Okay. All of a sudden, the Yetzer Hara overcame him. He looks up and he sees that there's dates on the tree. He climbs up the tree like an animal, like a monkey, grabs the dates that aren't his and starts eating the dates. And he stole. He stole from trees that weren't his. Right? So we see that indeed that head covering protected Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak. So it humbles a person before HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It saves him from the Yetzer Hara. That makes people arrogant and haughty and free to do whatever they want. That's one way of saying. Therefore, the mitznefet, which was the head covering, acted as that symbol, as fear of heaven, to protect the person and say, hey, there's someone in front, on top of you, kind of like why we have the kippah now. Keep yourself low. Don't be too arrogant. That's one way of answering the question. Another way that answers the question is that the mitznefet was a symbol of pride, atoned for ga'ava, because the way to overcome a negative ga'ava, a negative form of haughtiness, is to acquire a positive form of ga'ava. The pasuk says about Melech Yehoshaphat in Divrei Yamim, "Vayigba libo bedarchei Hashem," that his heart was elevated in the ways of God. So there is such a thing as gova lev, as arrogance, when it's for the sake of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The Baal Shem Tov writes, why is it that Adam was the only human being that was created alone? All the other creations, there was multitudes. But Adam, he was created by himself. So he says, because he wants, the HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants all his descendants to say that the world was created for me. Ha'olam nivra bishvili. The world was created simply, it was dependent on me. Because the Yetzer Hara is telling you, you're not worthy. You're not worthy to perform mitzvah. You're not worthy to serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And that's when you have to use ga'ava and fight him and say, no, I am worthy. I am worthy to be one of God's children. I'm worthy to be a servant and to serve him with happiness and as well with yir'ah. And the truth is, that's not ga'ava. That's actually the ultimate humility. People think that humility is feeling low about yourself, feeling unimportant. The genuine humility is when a person actually believes that his tefillot are going to be are desired, and his Torah study is going to be cherished by HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and that he's important to Hashem. That realization is what's humbling. The awareness of Hashem's greatness humbles a person, and it's like a holy ga'ava simultaneous with actual humility. So if you look at the menorah, the main lamp of the menorah was the middle one. Ve'asita nerotea shiv'a, pasuk says, make 7 lamps. Ve'e'ela et nerotea al ever panea, and light them towards the middle one, towards the face, which is the middle one. So the Chachamim explained that all the lamps were actually bent and facing the one in the middle. So see, the middle one was the most significant. The middle one was also the smallest branch. It had to be the smallest branch because if the other ones had the curve, that means it must have been taller than the middle one. So we see that's the reason. The middle branch is important because it represents this trait of being small, of being humble. The one who considers himself the smallest, that's the one who's considered the the greatest. Of course, we don't have to mention last week's parasha, the dimensions of the Aron being all half dimensions. Okay, it was 2.5 amot long, an amah and a half wide, an amah and a half high. Because when it comes to Torah, when it comes to spirituality, you can never consider yourself to be complete. You're always half there. Always consider yourself half there. I learned the whole shas, you're only half there. I learned every day of my life, chazak, but you're only half there. Because that brings you a sense of humility. The month of Adar that we are in now, the Chidushei Arim it stands for Aluf Dar Rash. That Hashem, the Alufi, Hashem dwells with the Rash. He dwells with the humble ones. And among the traits of those people who are humble is Shom'im Cherpatam Ve'ena Meshivim. People who hear people disgrace about them, but they don't answer back. They prefer to avoid machloket rather than stick up for their honor. I know this is something very hard to do. Most people, if you're attacked, not physically, but verbally attacked, your automatic instinct is to defend yourself and to act in defense. Right? You talk to me about like that, but what about you? Look at you. And then this whole argument starts. But a person that is actually able to swallow, that's the meaning of swallowing your pride. That's where it comes from. I'm swallowing my pride. I'm not answering back. That is one of the highest levels that a person could reach. And it's mesugal for many, many yeshuot. There was once a yeshiva, Bet Midrash, in Lakewood that was built mainly because of one guy who did a lot of good fundraising. And because he did all the fundraising, he made the rules of the Bet Midrash. So he made a rule, and he insisted, no talking during tefillah. Okay, it's a good rule to have, no talking during tefillah. But each week before the reading of the Torah, he went up on the bima, he said, Rabotai, in this Bet Knesset, no talking during tefillah. Every single week he went up. Now, some people in the Bet Midrash, hey, he wanted to talk, okay, I want to talk, they're whispering over there. I didn't appreciate these weekly announcements, right? You know exactly how it feels when someone says, you tell me to talk, no, stop talking, and everyone starts getting upset. They didn't appreciate these announcements, right? And every week they would say, the guy would get up, say, announcement, Skoya, yeah, making fun of him, poking fun of him. And these jeers, it bothered the Gabbai, it bothered him. And but he kept on going. One week, the insults that were flying his way, it really, really got to him. They were penetrating him harshly. And finally, like, hey, who you tell us what to do? You tell us to be quiet. Just because you have a loud voice doesn't make you any better than us. We also have a loud voice. And he starts screaming back. The guy comes down from the bima. He's shamed. He's insulted. He didn't answer back. But at that moment, he went up to his dear friend. His name was Rav Aaron Deitch. And he went to Rav Aaron and he says, listen, he goes, in the merit of the shame that I just endured, in merit of that silence, Hashem is going to help you give a child. Rav Aaron went 17 years without a child. And he goes, I'm staying quiet because I want you to have a child. The following Shabbat, the Gabbai went up to the Bima and he said again, in this Bet Midrash, we don't talk, but he didn't have that koach anymore. He was still so insulted from the week before. A short while later, he decided, you know what, this place is not for me. And he went and he left the shul. But he kept up with his friends. One day, on the yard side of a very big tzaddik, Rav Aaron went up to his friend and said, listen, come with me to the kever of this rabbi. Okay, we're going to go pray. We're going to pray for children. A lot of yeshuot. But by then it was already 18 years after he got married. You know, me have children. Come on, like where are we going to go? He goes, come on, let's just go. So finally the guy agreed. He goes, I'm only going to go if you go back and make peace with the people who embarrassed you in the Bet Midrash. Now that wasn't easy for a guy to go make peace. I don't want anything to do with that shul, but I'm going to go just for you. And Mamash, the story ends that 1 year later, okay, he had a child after 18 years because of the combination of 5 people: Father, Mother, God. Those are the 3 partners in creation. The tzaddik, okay, and the Gabbai who swallowed his pride, didn't fight back, and still went to make peace with the other people. A similar story: a family in Beitar who didn't have children for many, many years. The husband was involved in communal work, and once he was at a community meeting in Tzvat, and someone insulted him. Usually, you get insulted when you're doing things for free. That's generally what happens in life, right? And community work, and he gets insulted. He was ready to answer back, but he said, you know what? I'm going to stop. He goes. Actually, someone went up to him and said, don't say anything. I actually have a brother who needs a shidduch. In merit of your silence, don't say anything. Just hold yourself back. So he remained silent. 2 weeks later, the Bahur got engaged. Chazaku Baruch. But here's the second half of the story. The second half of the story, that the guy who stayed quiet, his wife heard what happened, and he said, I don't understand. You had the merit to remain silent, and the older Bahur became a Khatan. Why didn't you keep it for ourselves? Like, we need children. So why you give the zechut to the other guy? Keep silent and use that zechut for us to have children. He said, don't worry. There's going to be a time where someone is going to insult you, and your test is to remain quiet as well. And he said, not long afterwards, again, they were in Tzvat. They were walking down the street, minding their own business, and there were some rowdy, cruel, I guess maybe anti-religious people poking fun at them. And his wife began to cry in tears, like, you're making fun of my husband. How can you do so? And she thought that the husband thought that she was crying from humiliation. And I was I was ready to go fight back. Oh, you don't talk to my wife that way, and then scream right back at them. But he held his cool, and right away she said, I kept quiet. Now's the time to pray. They prayed, and a year later they had a child. That's the power of a person that is able to retain, their pride and hold it in and swallow their pride. Be humble. It's katit la ma'od. It's crushed. You're crushing yourself. That's how you're zocheh to the light of Torah. And of course, the Torah finds itself in the most humble places. We've spoken many times about the water of the Torah that trickles down into the lowest places, and that's where it deserves to be. I want to pivot and go talk about something else connected to the pasuk. This is said in the name of Rav Shalom Shwadron. One of the most famous Jewish songs I remember as a child, which is actually a pasuk in Tehillim, is Hine Matov U'Mana'im. We grew up with school and camp. Hine Matov U'Mana'im Shevet Achim Gam Yachad. Behold, how good, how pleasant is the dwelling of brothers. Moreover, Shevet Achim Gam Yachad, in unity together. So Rav Shalom Shwadron asked students in the yeshiva, what do you think David HaMelech meant when he said this pasuk? So some of them wanted to say, friends, they come together at a wedding, at a bar mitzvah, they eat a little bit, they sing a little bit, Hine matov u'manayim. Look at the story that he told over. Of course, Rav Shalom Shwadron was known as the Magid of Yerushalayim. He says there were two villagers, and in many villages around the world, the custom was, at the end of the day, was to go into the local pub, local bar and tavern, and drink. That's the way it was. You go have a little shot of whiskey, scotch. That's what they did. So nighttime came. They worked a lot of hard labor, and they found their way in the local pub. And they started, they took a shot, l'chaim, drinking, and they drank a quart of the glass, and then another shot, and another shot, and then all of a sudden, it was a lot of whiskey. It was like, we're going through a whole bottle now, these two guys. One of the villagers turns to his friend, looks at him, and he says in a drunk voice, hey friend, do you love me? Do you love me? And the guy says back, sure, I love you. Boom, and he drinks again. And then the first guy looks at him and goes, but do you know my troubles? Do you know what I'm going through in my life? And the guy goes, no, I don't know what's going on in your life. So how can you say that you love me if you don't even know what I'm going through? You don't have any idea of what's worrying me, of what's going through my mind, what's going through my head. You don't have any idea of why I can't sleep at night. So how can you say that you love me? And this mashal really pierced the hearts of the Rebbe and the people listening. This true words that he wanted to understand. How can a person be called an Ohev Yisrael, a lover of Yisrael, without actually knowing what our friends are feeling? Shevet Achim Gam Yachad, brothers dwelling together. At the very least, if you're living together, if you're connected with each other, at the very least, know what your brother is feeling. Know what he's going through, what's troubling him. Sense the pain of his heart. Understand what's on his mind. That's the minimum requirement for Shevet Achim Gam Yachad. But says Rav Shvadron, there's a higher level of Shevet Achim Gam Yachad, of brothers living together. It's common knowledge that when twins are born, even from very young, they often identify with each other's needs. One cries, the other one cries. Nothing happened to the other one. Only one of them got hurt. But he sees his brother crying, so he starts crying. So even as babies, brothers have a Gam Yachad relationship. And each one is sensing their pain and crying along with him. But Moshe Rabbeinu, his Gam Yachad was exponentially greater than this. It was literal. And we see it in this week's Perashah. Two brothers, Moshe and Aharon. The Pasuk says, Ve'ata tetzave et bnei Israel. And you shall command bnei Israel, ve'ikhu elecha, and they shall take for you, shemen zayit zach, pure olive oil, katit lamaor, pressed for illumination. Why does the Pasuk say, ve'ikhu elecha? Take for you. Hashem's talking to Moshe. Speak to Bnei Israel, take for you. Was the oil designated for Moshe? No. The oil was designated for Aaron. Who was the one who was supposed to light the menorah? It was Aaron. It should say, Veikhu la'aron achicha. Shemen zayit katit lamaor. What's Veikhu elecha? It was Aaron's, his brother, who lit the menorah. It's a famous question. It's a question that's asked by the Orach Chaim, okay, and other mefarshim in the Torah. This is what the Chachamim explain. In Parashat Shemot, Moshe Rabbeinu declines to go to Mitzrayim. Doesn't want to go. Shelach na biyat tishlach. Please Hashem, I can't do it. I have the speech impediment. We spoke about that in the class. Giving all excuses. They're not going to believe me. Whoever you want to send. This is not for me. And the Torah tells us, Vayichar af Hashem b'Moshe, that the wrath of God came on Moshe, and he said, Halo Aaron achicha imach? Isn't Aaron your brother with you? I'm forgetting the words. Ani yodea ki daber bo, something along those lines. I know that he's going to speak on behalf of you. He's going to meet you, and he's going to happily do it. Your brother Aaron is going to be the person who's relaying the message, which is exactly what happened. And at that moment, Moshe Rabbeinu was punished, that he would not be the Kohen, but rather he's going to be the Levi, and Aaron was going to be the Kohen. So Rashi, on that pasuk, cites two opinions. Rabbi Yoshua ben Korcha says in the Gemara that every time the word Vayichar af Hashem is used, every time that God flared in his anger, there's always a lasting mark, a punishment that's coming down. But Rabbi Yoshua ben Korcha says this was an exception. He said that Moshe Rabbeinu didn't get punished. God was really upset at him, but he didn't get punished. Rabbi Yosef argues with Rabbi Yoshua, and he says, no, Moshe got punished. He got punished here. There is a mark. What's the mark? Halo Aaron achicha Levi. Your brother Aaron, who was a Levi, no longer is going to be a Levi. He's going to be the Kohen. You were meant to be the Kohen. You lost the priesthood as a result of this. I intended that the Kehunah would come from you, but now it's not. Now that you angered me, now you're going to remain a Levi. He will be the Kohen, you're going to be a Levi. So, Shelach na beyat tishlach, that statement by Moshe was, he got punished and he lost the Kehunah to his brother Aharon. What was Moshe Rabbeinu's response to that? How do you react? Oops. I made a big boo-boo. Right? What do? Your brother now is the guy who is serving HaKadosh Baruch Hu in the most amazing ways possible, and not you, and knowing that it could have been you. Let's look at those three psukim in Tehillim. Hine matov uma na'im shevet achim gam yachad. Again, behold, how good, how pleasant is the dwellers of brothers, moreover in unity. Keshemen hatov al harosh yored al zakan, like the precious oil upon the head, running down upon the beard. Zekan Aharon, like the beard of Aharon, sheyored al midotav, running down on his garments. Ketal Chermon sheyored al harere Sion, so too does the dew of Hermon descend upon the mountains of Zion. Who were literally Gam Yachad together? Moshe and Aaron. What does it mean? Keshemen hatov ala rosh yored ala zakan, like precious oil running down upon the beard of Aaron. This is the oil that Moshe Rabbeinu used to anoint Aaron, and that oil ran down his face to his beard. Now, why is the word zakan mentioned twice in Tehillim? It says Keshemen hatov ala rosh yored ala zakan, and then zakan Aaron. Why is it mentioned twice? Just say ala zakan. Okay, we know it's Aaron. Aaron didn't have two beards; he had one beard. So Midrash tells us the first mention of zakan is Moshe's beard. The second one is Aaron because it says zakan Aaron. What does mean Moshe's beard? What does it mean to us? Chachamim explained that when Moshe was anointing Aaron to be the Kohen Gadol, to be the priest, and the oil was running down Aaron's head, down to his beard, Moshe grabbed his own beard with a sense of actual physical pleasure, as if he was the one that was experiencing this phenomenon. He was totally, intensely involved in this, that he was grabbing his own beard, and he felt like the oil was coming down on his beard. And Moshe Rabbeinu, when he realizes, he was afraid that he misused the oil, the Shemen HaMishcha. There's something called Me'ilah. Me'ilah is a sin to misuse holy objects. So Moshe Rabbeinu was worried, maybe by me going like this, I'm so connected, that's how involved, that's how happy he was for his brother, that he actually thought he was misusing oil that wasn't even on him. But that's the enjoyment and the pleasure that he had. That's how Moshe Rabbeinu felt about his punishment. He didn't sit in the corner to mope and complain and say, this is not fair. I'm starting my own shul. I'm starting my own religion. I'm getting out of here. Who is he to start? No. What about me? No. I'm here. This is what he felt. He anointed his brother, something that was taken away from him, and he was so happy. He was so filled with pleasure in his brother's happiness that he thought he was committing me'ilah. And that's the meaning of the pasuk. Keshemen hatov ala rosh yored ala zakan. It was Moshe's zakan. It's unbelievable. Do we have any idea? Do we have any inkling on what an exalted level this is of Moshe Rabbeinu? Were we to live 1,000 years, who knows if we can understand something like this? And that's who Moshe Rabbeinu was. That's the man who received the Torah on our behalf. Because Moshe Rabbeinu was concerned that maybe he transgressed Me'ilah, HaKadosh Baruch Hu told him, don't worry. So too the dew of the Hermon descends on the mountains of Zion. Just like the dew on Har Hermon does not constitute a misuse of a holy object, neither you didn't do anything wrong with your oil of anointment. What is the Hermon? The Hermon is a tall mountain in the northern of Israel, okay, that people go skiing on because there's snow and ice on it all year. All right, and a reference to dew falling in Yerushalayim or in Tel Aviv or in Haifa, maybe that has some meaning. But what sort of impression does dew make when it lands on the snow of Hermon? Why do I care that there's dew on the mountains of Hermon? Hashem said to Moshe Rabbeinu, that's exactly the point. You're worried because you experience physical pleasure, but you have no body. You are so holy at this moment, Moshe. You have purified yourself to an extent that it's not feasible for you to experience something physical. And alachat kama v'kama think that you're misusing it. Moshe Rabbeinu purified his body that his whole goof went up to Shamayim. For us, when we die after 120, our neshamot go up to Shamayim. Our body rots in the ground. Moshe Rabbeinu wasn't like that. It's the whole goof went up. Moshe Rabbeinu didn't need to eat. He didn't need to drink when he was on Har Sinai for 40 days and 40 nights. It self-sustained itself. Because it was all spirituality for him. The soul does not require food. It does not require water. Moshe Rabbeinu didn't blast off into a rocket in order to reach heaven. If he had, he wouldn't have arrived. Heaven's way too tall. How did he get there? He got there through a process of purification. That's the level of Moshe Rabbeinu. That's the meaning of Ketal Chemon Sheyored al Harere Sion. The dew of Chemon descends upon the the Mount of Zion. There was a rabbi, big tzaddik, who would fast from week to week. Many people did this. My great-grandmother used to do this. She used to fast from Erev Shabbat to Erev Shabbat, not including Shabbat. All right? And these people were extremely holy. But when it came to Shabbat, this rabbi, he would eat. But eat like you have no idea. But people were watching him and saying, once this rabbi's brother saw, he goes, I can't let my brother eat there. So he would eat with his brother. Right? And until he got sick, they had to call doctors because the brother was eating because he only saw the tzaddik eat. But too much food consumption, you get sick. You had to call the doctors that it was getting dangerous. The tzaddik was eating not because he needed to eat. The tzaddik was eating because I just need to survive. I just need to breathe. It's not for anything physical pleasure. When you're thinking like that, then yeah, the food is going to weigh you down. And then it's no longer something that is spiritual. Although food is the most physical of things that we have in this world, for the Rish Tzaddikim, it was something that was only spiritual. So when Moshe Rabbeinu went to God and said, God, did I misuse the fragrant oil of anointment, the Shemen HaMishcha? HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, Hine ma tov u'ma na'im, shevet achim gam yachad. Just like Aaron, your brother, didn't transgress, you two are like this. Don't worry, you didn't transgress. What an exalted world that these tzaddikim live by. Even if you were to fulfill every inch in this Bet Midrash with books, Teilim and Shiurim and Divrei Torah of original Torah thought, we wouldn't arrive at the beginning of the Torah sweetness. Because the Torah Hashem temimah, as David HaMelech writes in Teilim, the Torah of Hashem is perfect. After thousands and thousands of years of commentary, it's still whole, it's still perfect. Nothing is missing, and we have a lot to learn. We have a lot to learn. And that's what Moshe Rabbeinu, that's what Ve'ata Tetzave. Veichu elecha. This is something that people are going to learn from you. Your willingness to give it for your brother, the happiness that you displayed for your brother. That's why. And you didn't go and again open up your own synagogue and open up your own community. And you stuck with your brother, even though you made a mistake. That's what made Moshe Rabbeinu so special. That's what made him an even greater leader. That's what made him Va'ish Moshe Anav Meod Mikol Adam, the most humble of all people. And that's the person who could acquire the Torah the best, and the person who can impart the Torah the best. Wishing everybody a wonderful night.